I never thought I'd find myself being dragged into court by my neighbor, especially over something as ridiculous as not letting her onto my own land. But that's exactly what happened. It all started a few months ago when Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of our local HOA, decided she had some sort of authority over my private ranch. She marched up one day demanding access, claiming she had the right to inspect part of my property because it was within the community's interest. Now, here's the thing, my ranch isn't even part of the HOA, never has been, but Karen didn't care. She was convinced she could bully her way in. At first, I tried to stay calm. I explained to her very politely that this was private land and that the HOA had no jurisdiction here. But Karen wasn't having it. She stormed off, red-faced and furious. I figured that'd be the end of it. I was wrong. A few weeks later, I got served. Yep, she actually filed a lawsuit, claimed I was violating some vague community guideline and interfering with neighborhood transparency. At that point, I had a decision to make roll over and let her win, or fight back. What she didn't know was that I'm a retired attorney. I've spent over 30 years in the courtroom. And while I came out here to enjoy a quieter life, I wasn't about to let someone like her push me around. What came next turned into a showdown. That caught the attention of more than just our little neighborhood. And let's just say, Karen had no idea what she'd started. You won't believe what she tried to pull next and how it all unraveled in the courtroom now. Before I get into what happened in court, let me back up a bit and give you the full picture. I moved out to this ranch about 5 years ago after retiring from law. I'd spent most of my life dealing with legal disputes, contracts, courtroom drama, you name it. So when I finally stepped away from all that, all I wanted was peace and quiet. Just me, my land, and some good old-fashioned hard work out in the open air. My ranch sits right outside the HOA boundary close, but not under their rules. That's important. Karen, though, didn't seem to care about technical details. She'd only moved into the neighborhood a year ago. From the moment she arrived, she was on a mission to clean up the community. She started with noise complaints, then moved on to mailbox colors, and eventually decided she had some kind of say over everyone's property. When she found out I wasn't part of the HOA, it was like a personal insult to her. She claimed my ranch ruined the aesthetic of the area, whatever that means. And because my driveway runs near the edge of the development, she decided she had a right to walk through whenever she wanted without permission. That's when things got weird. I started noticing her taking pictures from the road. She'd stand at the fence with a notepad, jotting things down like she was building a case. At first, I brushed it off as nosy behavior. But then she started telling other neighbors I was hiding something. She even hinted that I was running an illegal business out of the barn, which is ridiculous. The only thing in that barn is old tools, some chickens, and my dog, Hank. But that was just the beginning. A few days after Karen started spreading rumors about me, I got a visit from a county code enforcement officer. Apparently, someone had submitted an anonymous complaint saying I was violating zoning laws running a commercial operation without a permit. When I asked for details, the officer admitted the report was vague and didn't hold much water. But they still had to follow up. I knew exactly who was behind it. Karen was trying to get authorities involved to scare me into submission. She wasn't just being nosy anymore. She was digging for any reason to force me off my own land. The thing is, this ranch has been zoned agricultural for decades, long before any of the fancy houses went up down the road. Got all the paperwork, all the deeds, everything in line. But that didn't stop Karen. She took things further. One afternoon, I caught her standing just inside the fence line, not on the road. It's not near her property, on mine. She was holding her phone up like she was filming something, pretending not to notice me. When I confronted her, She claimed she was inspecting community damage and said my fencing was creating a hazard to neighborhood pets. I told her firmly to leave. That's when she smiled and said, "You'll be hearing from my attorney." Sure enough, a few weeks later, I was served with a civil suit. She was claiming I had violated some kind of community access right and accused me of being a public safety risk. And just like that, we were headed for court. I started gathering evidence, pulling property maps, printing old zoning records. Everything. But what I didn't know was that Karen had a few tricks up her sleeve too. She wasn't just bluffing, she had allies. And they weren't just neighbors. As the court date got closer, things started heating up fast. I noticed more and more cars slowing down near my ranch, people I didn't recognize snapping photos from their windows. One guy even flew a drone overhead, hovering just long enough to make my dog bark like crazy. I knew Karen had started rallying support, but it was clear now that she'd gone beyond gossip. She was organizing something. I later found out she had started a group chat with other HOA members, calling it a neighborhood protection task force. Her words, not mine. Then came the petition. She went door to door with a clipboard, telling neighbors I was endangering the community, lowering property values, and hiding unsafe structures behind my barn. I got a copy of it shoved into my mailbox, no name on it, of course, but it had about a dozen signatures. And here's the kicker. One of those signatures was from a board member on the HOA committee, someone who knew very well my land wasn't under their jurisdiction. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just Karen acting on her own. There were people actually buying into her fantasy of authority, and that made things a lot more complicated. I knew I'd have to go all in now. I spent late nights reviewing case law, preparing statements, organizing every piece of documentation I had. I even set up cameras around the property just in case, because by this point, it wasn't just a legal dispute. It was a battle over control, over privacy, and over principle. Karen had created a storm, and I was right in the middle of it. Then, the night before the hearing, I got a surprise knock at the door. Someone I'd never expected to see again. And what they told me changed everything. I opened the door, and standing there was my old law partner, Greg. I hadn't seen him in years, not since I left the city behind. He looked serious, holding a folder under one arm and glancing back over his shoulder like he didn't want to be seen. I stepped aside and let him in. The first thing he said was, "I heard about your HOA problem. It's bigger than that." That stopped me cold. Greg told me he'd recently taken on a case involving a neighboring HO, and not ours exactly, but one tied to the same management company. He'd been digging into some shady dealings, and guess whose name had come up in a damn skew? And how I would see. Only Ruby Kiss has the luxurious texture that glides on, lives so long with Sarn last, and leaves a rich, long-lasting color. But one Sar like so law, to why some lastive. But one lies, by we have come my colic. You would be to wise at weis, de buys, suller. It is so why, by wise it is, wise it is so why. It is it. With sev it is it is it. I will is it it's it. With a c may with a career kkx a kite at sequeak kasai me livets kasiket it's kad I sit to the by it's it a bit of a busted this must be this has couple of internal emails. Karen's turns out she wasn't just some overzealous neighbor with a power complex. She had a connection to the property developer that helped build the HOA community next to my ranch. According to Greg, there were whispers that a few parcels, including mine, were originally targeted for future expansion, but the zoning fell through. Apparently, Karen was trying to correct that mistake on her own terms. That explained a lot. Her sudden obsession with gaining access, her constant inspections. The lies about safety risks, it wasn't about fences or chickens. It was about pushing me out so the land could be absorbed into the HOA and flipped for profit. If that was true, then this civil suit wasn't just harassment. It was part of a much larger plan. I thanked Greg, and as he handed me the folder of documents, he warned me to watch my back. He wasn't the only one looking into this mess, and not everyone wanted the truth coming out. What I didn't know then was that the next morning in court, Karen had one last card to play, and she wasn't alone. The rain came down harder as Maya stood frozen, staring at the figure in front of her. It was Daniel live. Her heart pounded. He looked thinner, worn down, but it was him. He stepped forward slowly, eyes wide with the same disbelief. "I had to disappear," he said, voice trembling. "They were watching me. I couldn't risk leading them to you." Maya felt anger, confusion, and relief all at once. "You let me believe you were dead for 2 years, Daniel. 2 years. I thought it was the only way to keep you safe. But I was wrong. They never stopped watching you. That's why I came back." Before she could respond, the door behind them creaked open. Detective Harris, the one who had helped her with the case, walked in. He didn't look surprised to see Daniel. In fact, he looked calm. To calm, that's when it clicked. Maya's voice dropped. "You knew." Harris nodded, not even trying. "To deny it, I didn't just know. I helped him disappear. It was part of the plan to expose the people behind it all. But we didn't count on how deep it went." Daniel looked at him sharply. "You said we were done, that she'd be safe." Harris shook his head slowly. "There's one last piece left. And Maya has it." Maya's mind raced. The old USB drive. The one Daniel had given her the night before he vanished. She thought it was nothing, just files, maybe photos. But now she realized why people had been following her. Why the break-ins never made sense. She pulled it out from her bag, fingers trembling. "What's on this?" Daniel exchanged a glance with Harris, then looked back at her. Proof of everything. The money laundering, the false identities, the betrayals. It connects them all. Maya stared at the small piece of plastic in her hand. Her entire life had changed because of it. "Then let's end it," she said. They uploaded the files, and the fallout was immediate. Arrests were made, names exposed, the web of lies unraveling across news channels like wildfire. For the first time in years, Maya felt like she could breathe, but just as she sat on her balcony days later, sipping coffee and watching the city come back to life, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You opened the door. Now you can't close it." Her heart dropped. She looked around. Nothing seemed out of place, but the calm suddenly felt too quiet. Maya thought it was over. But someone was still out there. And now they knew exactly where to find her. Maya sat frozen, staring at the message on her phone. The street below buzzed with life, but her world had gone silent. She'd thought the truth would bring peace, but instead, it opened another door. One she didn't mean to walk through. After a few deep breaths, she forwarded the message to Harris. Within minutes, he called her back. "It's a scare tactic," he said. "We expected some backlash, but the major players are already behind bars. You're safe now." She wanted to believe him, and over the next few days, as nothing else happened, she began to. The media buzz slowly died down. Her name faded from the headlines, and the weight on her shoulders started to lift. Daniel moved into a small apartment across the city and began rebuilding his life quietly, away from the spotlight. They stayed in touch, but Maya knew things would never be the same. Too much had changed. Still, there was peace in finally knowing the truth. She returned to her work as a journalist, this time more fearless, more focused. The USB files not only cracked open the corruption behind the scenes, but also gave her a new purpose to uncover what others were too afraid. 2. The mystery had changed her, made her stronger as she wrapped up her final report on the story. She ended it with a thought that stuck with her since that night on the balcony. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free, changes the path. You walk forever. And that was okay. The message that once sent a chill down her spine was now just a reminder of survival, of truth, and of the power one person has when they stop running from the dark and decide to shine a light instead.